All right. I think we're live. All right, cool. Yeah, no fancy intro this time, guys, because I'm all by myself tonight. But let's see what we can do here tonight. Let me just kind of like adjusting some things, seeing if anyone else joins, kind of just popping up all my stuff, getting it ready. Let's get some stuff rolling. I'm actually kind of excited about tonight. So as you guys know, I'm going solo here. No Scott tonight. This is just going to be me kind of drawing underneath the camera, talking about some stuff with you guys. I used to go live solo all the time on my Instagram channel, and I've been telling myself I need to do this more often, but just like playing music in the background, talking about what I do as I draw and kind of make it. I realize that's really what I wanted this show to be anyways from the beginning. So yeah, it's gonna kind of just gonna be a fun time tonight. A couple different things here. First, I wanted to share this with you guys because I'm actually not going to be inking tonight. I'm actually going to be drawing because I've got to get some pages done, and I'm trying not to spoil too much stuff, and this one's not super spoilery, but this is like my little character page that I always throw up in front of me when I'm drawing these guys here, and about to draw her and do like a side mask view and some shots of her pulling a sword out kind of thing. So got that in front of me, got the panel, got the borders all lined up and ready to roll, and I'm kind of just going to like play with some pencils, so that's going to be fun too because I don't usually show the pencil action for you guys either. So let's see what we can do here. Let's do some damage, right? First of all, welcome to Live Ink, the solo show. I want to say a couple of different things. I do want to give a quick shout out to Scott, who is not here right now, but for anybody who doesn't know, he had a really cool thing going on. He went live with the Artcasters earlier this week. It was a really cool show. I would definitely recommend Matt Circlin's channel. So there you go. He gets a little shout out too, it looks like. But yeah, so no fault to him for not being here tonight. You know, we all get busy lives and kind of have to do our things, but I thought it was really cool to share that he actually had an opportunity to do his thing with some other dudes earlier this week. And that's kind of rad. So props to Scott for that one. And then I've also wanted to say a couple other things. The Live Ink sketch show is all about art problems and things that I've kind of discovered along the way through my journey. And kind of wanted to do today's episode as a making deadlines for yourself, because with analog missions, one thing that I've definitely discovered over the months that I've been working on it, it's the only reason I'm as far as I am right now is because I set a deadline. I told myself, from October 1st, when I drew the first page, I want this thing to go live. I want a Kickstarter. I want to do this thing by March 7th. And that date, I think it's the 8th. I keep saying that. It's whatever that Friday is. But that date has not changed. I am pushing along. I'm staying up late the past couple of nights. Like I'm getting things done. I will have be ready for it. And I realize it's because I set a very hard date for myself from the beginning of this project. So I kind of wanted to talk about that and make this like the topic of tonight's show. And, you know, it doesn't hurt that as I talk about that, I'm actually doodling the thing as well. So this is kind of fun, actually, too, because like I said, you might not know it from what my style sort of looks like, but my pencils are extremely sketchy and rough from the beginning of a sketch, because I start things off just trying to figure out proportions and sizes and stuff before I actually start getting them onto the page. So this is going to be a fun one to watch me as I kind of go along doing my ink thing tonight. Like I said, I'm doing like a little bit of a holding the sword thing here. I realize this, man, I have drawn so many hands in this comic, and they are hands are the worst. And I definitely think that by the end of this, I'm getting much better at my shortcuts and things for hands, because, man, I have drawn so many hands. But anyway, hands will be the topic maybe of a future show, right? Because you can never get enough hands. All right, yeah, there we go. I like that proportion much better. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going on tonight. We do start sharing a launch party. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. Ace is referring to the fact that him and Rao, Ace is the guy we had on last week for our show. And him and a partner of his just finished doing a very successful Kickstarter, and they're planning a launch party that's going to be pretty awesome at a a place local called Pawn and Pint, which I love. It's like a board games and stuff, kind of like bar kind of mix, and it's a really rad place. The owner is a really cool dude. All right, so I decided what I was going to do to start out the show is let's just do a fun progress, plans, and problems, even though I know that it's just me. And I'm art checking, but it's kind of like I'm basically art checking with you guys now, right? Because the reason why we started the art check, for anyone who tuned in, and I know a couple of you guys, I think I saw in the chat whenever we were watching Artcasters last week, or I guess it was Thursday. But one of the things about the art check was that Scott and we used to do this really fun thing when he lived in Kansas City called the Monday Night Losers. And we would literally just meet up every Monday and we would be like, this is what I've done so far for the week. What have you done for the week, kind of thing. And we would like share what we did basically exactly in the same format, just not live. We actually even went live a couple of times kind of when we were learning how to get this show going. And basically the point of it is just like getting out in front of somebody and getting some accountability from other people who are watching you do your thing. And so it's really cool that at this point, you guys are part of that accountability. So I kind of thought it'd be fun to do that. Just started out by doing like, what's my progress? So far, guys, chapter 3 is rolling along. Day 1 of chapter 3, I woke up an hour earlier than my already waking up an hour early. I got to school and I planned for the day, and I still probably had almost a full hour of just literally being in my classroom. I cut all of my paper. Every single page that needs to be used for chapter 3 is cut. It's in my portfolio. I went through the first 8 of them, and as you can see here, you can kind of see my panel borders and stuff here. I went through and did my panel borders for all those pages as well. Sorry, I got like a little bit distracted with my racing here. I went through and did all my panel borders as well. And so I just literally have been just each day I've just been going to the next page, knocking through it, hitting some pencils, going to the next one, kind of knocking some pencils. And then every time I get ever so many pages, I'll go back and I'll ink. So the first 4 pages have been inked. And then I'm probably on page 6 or 7 in terms of like kind of roughing out some pencils. Just like every chapter, there's about 12 to 13 pages. So as you can see, I've got week and a half, probably more, and I'm just cruising. I'm ready to roll. I'm doing this thing. And I really think it is because of the things I'm going to talk about in today's episode, which is just like I have a deadline and I know that there's a bunch of people who are excited just as much as I am. And that's awesome. And it's like kind of almost like this really cool thing where I'm able to use that excitement for myself to kind of get things going and like make something happen from it. So yeah, Scott always gives me kind of props on this one, but I kind of have written down like a 3-point plan in terms of like, what are deadlines and how should you use them, and like why I think they're so important for like setting them for yourself. So I'll quickly end with problems. Problems being sometimes I immediately draw a page and I think of already a better composition or a way I could do it better or something like that. And without a deadline, I might be able to go back and do that. And I even have kind of struggled with myself thinking like, is it a good thing or a bad thing that I haven't given myself that? And I think it's a good thing. Because literally, like, if any of you guys are artists, and I know a few of you are, you know how, like, without a really hard, strict deadline, you could literally be running yourself in circles wanting to just, like, redraw things over and over and over again because you know you could do it better after you've finished drawing it and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that just goes right back to, like, what I'm about to start talking about. But I think it's been my biggest problem is just, like, this feeling of, when all this is done, I'm going to take a break from just pumping out things, and I'm going to do some studies. Like, I cannot wait, and this is like a funny thing to say because I'm stoked to be drawing what I am drawing, but I just can't wait to sit back and just like draw some anatomy studies, do some live drawing, like do some model drawing, revisit some just shape drawing and just things like that, because like the more I do this kind of stuff, the more I realize I can use that kind of practice. And then I know the next time I do the next issue of Analog Missions that I will have an even faster flow and be able to set even stricter deadlines. So let's talk about that. Making deadlines for yourself as a freelance sort of do-it-yourself artist, which I am. I think it's really important that if you're not working with a client and you're just trying to work on a personal project, that you have got to set a deadline for whatever project you're working on, no matter how arbitrary the thing might be. Maybe it's not as strict as like, hey, I'm doing a Kickstarter and this book needs to be drawn so that by the time this Kickstarter is over, this book is done and I can get it to my people, because that's a big thing for me. one of the big reasons I've been so scared, if that's a good word for it, to do a Kickstarter and just finally sort of got the guts to do it is like, I have supported Kickstarters and I will support that artist again and again, but there's many times where you wait like over a year and if not more to get your book. And I don't want a Kickstarter where after the book is done, you're not just a couple months out because we're waiting on the printer to get that book and get it shipped to you, kind of thing. I think that's just a really big thing where I want my customers and the people who come to my Kickstarters to know that when you come to me, the is you're going to get your product sooner rather than later. And because I just really think that's just a good best practice of just making your people be comfortable with knowing that you're there to fulfill that thing. So I set the deadline for myself so that I would make sure that when it came time for it and things were done, that I wasn't wasting any time afterwards being like, oh, it's okay. I need to finish this thing. It's like, no, I want this thing to be done. And the only thing I'm doing that month of the Kickstarter is digital stuff, on the computer, formatting, designing, like those kinds of things there. That's the only thing I want to be focusing on my mind. So if you're doing a personal project, number one, set a deadline. I 100% am saying that the only reason I made it this far in my project is because I did that for myself. And I think it's part of why it's not easy to do a personal project because, you wake up one day and there's no deadline to hit and you're like, oh, cool, this new movie came out. And part of what I do and a lot of other people do is like fun fan art stuff is because you're just so stoked about a current thing that you're into. And so instead of drawing an analog missions page, you draw a cool blank character this or blank character that. And then you realize you spent another day not on your personal project, but on some other person's project or some other thing. And then you're like, cool, well, it's okay. I can just start that tomorrow. Or in the next day. Oh, no. Okay, I messed up today. I can start it the next day. And then you just kind of do that thing where you just run yourself in circles. Just thinking about the possible things that you could be doing and when you could have already drawn 2 full pages of your personal project. So I think part of that setting deadlines is just one of the things of getting an actual personal project started. I am 100% saying it's the only reason I finally got mine started. Inktober was what started it on day 1 of Inktober, or I guess before Inktober started, I said, what would be a perfect thing is if I set a goal for myself to finish so many pages by the end of this month, and every day I'll post my progress and I'll post my inks and all that kind of stuff. And I decided I would do a panel a day. And so I posted a panel a day. And by the end of that, I finished basically the first chapter in just a month, which is insane because 3 or 4 months later, and I'm still working a little bit more or less back and forth. So that was huge, like starting a month like that with a challenge and with a deadline. It's what made me realize that I needed to keep that thing going. I needed to make sure that I somehow set like more deadlines. I needed to not just be like, okay, cool, there we go, I did that challenge and then just whatever, because I did. In November, I even remember I like didn't get a lot done because I was just kind of like floating through it, like, cool, I'm doing some more work to it or whatever that kind of stuff is. And then I hit December and realized like I needed to announce like an actual literal date. Like I needed it to be a set in stone thing. And once I did that, it was like, okay, cool. Now I'm doing this, I'm rolling along, and things really started kicking into high gear. And then I have been since then basically finishing about a chapter a month, and that's been a good flow. And so I'm setting a deadline for this thing has been the only reason this thing has ever started, and it will be the only reason that I finish this thing. Okay, let's talk about my 3-point plan. Point number 1, and you guys might notice this. I've been doing a lot of digital stuff for the past podcast, so you guys probably have forgotten, but I talk with my hands a lot. I kind of do my thing like this, but setting a realistic goal that is still tight. Like you got to find that perfect mixture of 2 things. Like I could have been like, okay, I want to set a goal for myself, and but I don't know, let's say I'm gonna make it August or whatever. I'll give myself half the year basically to get this thing done, if not more, right? That's like the 8th month, so that's a lot of time. But I wanted to set a goal that I knew was just out of the bounds of what I can do, because that's how you get better at anything, right? Like I could start talking now about how you get better at art or how you get better at any of these kinds of things. And it's pushing yourself just out of your comfort zone. And so that is 100% what I did with this, is that I pushed myself just out of my comfort zone, knowing that a goal of getting this done by March was still a strict deadline, but not unrealistic. So point number one, if you're gonna do this thing, if you're gonna do a personal project, if you want to set a goal for yourself, make it realistic, but still a tight deadline so that you know you're still sort of challenging yourself. Okay. Point number two, and the biggest point of all, make it public. All right. So I wouldn't even say I have a giant following of any kind, right? Like I've got a couple thousand on Instagram. I got family and friends on Facebook. A few of you guys too have joined in on that side of it. We've got the 60 or so of you guys on here, the 5 to 6 of you that watch us every weekend. Like I'm not gonna got this huge thing going on, but when I tell someone that I'm gonna do something, I do that thing, right? I am going to 100% make sure that I finish the thing that I said I was going to do. So even if literally you just tell your family, friend, your wife, your spouse, your whatever, like, hey, I am going to finish this amount of pages by the end of this month. I need you to keep me accountable. Like, cool. That's awesome. That's all I'm talking about here. You have got to make it public. You've got to let somebody else besides yourself know, because you could easily set a date for yourself or some kind of due date and then just be like, cool, all right, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You need to kind of have some stakes, something on the line here, right? You need to almost like tell yourself, like, if I don't get this thing done, then this will happen to me. Like, if I don't get this thing done, then all of the people who follow me will know that I'm flaky. I don't stick to my word, and who knows what the future of my projects will look like. So I said, by making this thing public, I made it a pretty big deal for myself, right? Like I was like, okay, seriously, if I do not make this thing public, make everybody know, actually get this thing done, then once it comes time for me to do a future project, all you guys are gonna be like, cool, yeah, he said that last time and it didn't happen. And that's a big reason why I made mine public. So like, I just can't even just state it enough of how much it is just so important to make sure that when you make your deadline, you make it public and everybody knows about it. All right, point number 3 is just a double of point number 2, because what's better than 3 points, right? I don't want to stop at a 2-point system, but I also think this is kind of has its own merits and things that I can talk about, and it is accountability. Find somebody else who is also doing something similar. So that's why this is different. No matter what you got to do, join a forum, join a group, whatever that thing looks like find someone else who's also doing the thing that you are doing. Because if you also might run into challenges or things along the way, and then not have somebody else that you can like hit up with, right? Like Scott is my dude, right? That's why we do what we do. I'd rather be drawing started, because having a literal sort of business accountability partner, like, it's real. And any week where I don't do well, Scott does well. Any week where Scott doesn't do well, I always do well. It always happens. And then the other person can be like, what was it really that you were struggling with? And we can help each other with that. How much, so I really derailed there. How much thought have you put into your Kickstarter, or have you only been on your art? All right, awesome. So that's another thing. So Comic Den, I'm going to jump off you, Ace, and kind of talk about that as well. A big part of that is I put in a cushion, knowing how much time it would realistically take me to just do the drawings and be done with it would have been last month. But knowing that I also have to open up a Kickstarter, I have to build a tier system, I have to build your own images. Here's something for anyone who's never done a Kickstarter before. You can open up a project anytime you want. I literally have already started this project. It's like not public yet. It's like in my account, and I started formatting already. I made my title one. I started to cut and crop and kind of format and make images. Your images in a comic are this way, and all of the images that you will end up putting in your thing will be this way. So because of that, there is a lot of sort of format issues that you have to deal with. And so I knew I was going to run into that, because I did a bunch of research before all this kind of stuff happened as well. And so my deadline of March 7th was knowing not just that my drawings need to be done by then, but I have to build a good Kickstarter, right? I have to sit there and I have to type out paragraphs about what the project's about, who I am, why should you support me, and like all of these kinds of things that we're talking about here. And so, yes, Ace, that is a really good point. You have to be realistic about whatever your project is. So whatever it might be, you have to think past whatever the drawings are or the writing of your book, right? It's like, okay, I want to write a book in this amount of time. Well, you have to put into account editing that thing, right? Showing it to other people. I had to take almost a week of my time to scan in the whole first chapter because I knew I also wanted to build like a preview that I could give you guys in the newsletter so you guys could read that stuff and get excited about it, right? And so like a series of other things will come up on your project besides just the one thing. Like Ace was saying, like it's not just my art, it's also that I have all these other things in mind that I had to also do. So thinking about your sort of realistic goals and deadlines, know that all those things stack on top of each other. All right. So on the accountability issue, which is I know is where I was before I read Ace's comment there, finding somebody else who is also doing your thing. This goes to another issue or topic that I actually have in my list of things that one day I'm going to talk about on this sort of thing, which is like finding a way to share your art with people that's direct, like more than just like I posted on my account and my followers engage with me, like a forum or a private thing that you can find somewhere, like a Facebook group for comic people or something like that. I have a couple of those that I am also in, on top of the fact that I share and do my stuff with Scott. I also work with Chris Rao, who's the guy who Ace's partner in the Kickstarters with, on a daily basis. We're bothering each other and showing each other kind of what we've drawn and bouncing ideas off of each other. Surrounding yourself with other people who do your thing in your personal projects, that accountability, them knowing your deadlines, them asking you the same kinds of questions that I just got asked to, of just like, hey, have you thought about the fact that once this is all formatted, you also have to do this? So it's just like really important that you don't just make in your basement, which is what we do as artists, right? We sort of just hide away making our personal projects and hoping that when we're ready to share it, people will respond to that thing. That's a huge mistake to make, and a really easy one to make. It's just like, oh shoot, I just realized I've only been sharing this with one or two people or no people, and now it's time to drum up some interest on this project. What do I do next? I actually literally had this thought because today I was in my Kickstarter kind of editing stuff and making images. And so I was looking at some other current Kickstarters that were on, and man, I saw some cool projects. I saw some cool projects that were not anywhere close to their goal and had been on for a really long time. And I kind of tried to do some research on some of them, and I couldn't find any presence of the thing. Like I couldn't find any, like the guy who was posting it before he even made that thing public and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to like call anybody out, and that's why I'm not using any names or anything. But there's just this thing about like, I'm going to make this deadline for this cool project that I want to share with the world, but I haven't actually done any work to share this thing with the world before I made this thing public. And I think that's a huge trap, like we can find ourselves in really easily. And so that's kind of why I wanted to make that point kind of separate from the rest of them, because it is separate from the rest of them. Man, it's like as a teacher, you talk a lot, and I feel like I'm kind of in the zone here. I almost feel like what you feel like after a really long lecture to your students or something. So let's do a fun little summary of this thing here. 3-point plan. I want to make a personal project and I want to share this thing with the world. How do I get there? Number one, I want to see how long I can wait. Just kidding. Okay. Number one, realistic but tight deadline, right? The very first thing that you want to do to make sure that you are setting a goal for yourself and you're actually going to follow it is a realistic but tight deadline. Second, tell a friend, tell a spouse, tell a family member, do whatever the heck you think you need to do to make sure that somebody else besides you knows that this is your plan. And then third, is accountability, and on top of which is, get in a group, find other people doing your same thing, because the final part of that is commit, right? Don't set a goal and a deadline for yourself for some kind of cool project or some kind of thing that you want to do without also knowing that it's a huge commitment and you're going to have to commit to this thing to actually get this thing done. So that's my 3-point plan. That's pretty much most of what I wanted to talk about. If you guys have questions, I loved Ace's question. I loved being able to kind of bounce that stuff since you guys are in here chilling with me. If there's anything else you guys want to talk about, I'm going to hang out until the end of the half hour. We've still got about 10 minutes here, 5-10 minutes, as I just kind of play with and rough out some more of these pages. If you guys have some thoughts, share them. So right now I am playing with this scene here where character here, her name is Rhoda. She pops out onto the scene to, you know, fight a guy, and her sword sort of flips out, and then you get that cool like whooshing scene. I'm kind of trying to play with a way of like, I always get the immediate image in my mind. This has been a fun thing about drawing this comic, and it's why I can't wait to draw more, is like the immediate image is like standing in the distance, two guys staring at each other, but like how do you make that thing cool and a little bit more dynamic and cropping and cutting and stuff. And so I'm gonna kind of play with like fun like zoom ins and words and things like that. That I love. I'm gonna try and play with that more often. I didn't do it as much in this book as I had wished that I would have, because I'm not actually super good at that kind of thing. Drawing, words, writing, handwriting things, like not my specialty. So I don't have tons of them in the book, but I'm going to have more in my next one. I just realized I've never drawn the silhouette of what this character looks like here, or the profile view. So I am kind of playing with this as I go. After the comic is done, am I planning on doing any merchandise? So just as like a quick, like, and you can type and say something too while you're hearing me say this, but like, meaning like, am I going to make like buttons or pins or bookmarks or like shirts and things like that? Is that what you're asking? All right. Well, I love Squatchy's question too, so I'll get you next. So yes, we are planning, as I'd rather be drawing in general, to do some kind of cool I'd rather be drawing shirt that we want to be able to kind of wear at conventions and stuff. So I think when we get around to sort of realizing how we're going to do the formatting of that, I definitely planned on doing some kind of cool like Apollo or Analog Missions shirt kind of thing. I'm literally going to be doing as a tier on the Kickstarter like a bookmark tier of like, I'm going to do 4 different bookmarks of the different characters from the book. And then I'm going to have like a way to like get a cool bookmark of each of those characters or something like that. So yeah, I haven't really thought too much past just the book itself, because my future plans are a year apart. I'm going to make the next book. So if this is successful and I kind of do this thing, I'm going to keep these things rolling, and basically probably March of every year will be my year. And that way I kind of have that deadline again of knowing next year or this year when I'm just sort of doing my stuff, I have to make sure I'm also slowly working on the project and not making, because what happened with this one was I knew I needed to just get this thing rolling and I needed to make these deadlines and make this happen, or it was never going to happen. And so I have probably rushed a little bit through 1 or 2 of the things that I wish I could have had more time for. And so with that in mind, the books themselves are where I'm focusing right now. But yeah, a shirt of some kind for sure, because I think it'd be really cool to have Apollo or cool, maybe I make my own image of all the different characters and some kind of cool splash or something for it. So yes, let's see. Yeah, Squatchy says, I haven't even begun to think about a Kickstarter. I think I want to wait until I have like 3 issues done. Is that too slow of a pace for this sort of thing? So I think to each their own, Squatchy. I think the main reason why I want to do 1 issue and then do the Kickstarter is I kind of want to know, do I have an audience here? Like, do I want this one to be the one that I spend a bunch of time on? Because I did, like, this is my 4th adventure into some sort of comic of some kind. It's the longest I've done of any. I made some mini comics. I printed and sold some of my own one of my comics that I made a couple years ago, and it was like a little 16-page thing called Boy and His Bike. And that kind of confirmed the people who buy from me also would definitely enjoy buying comics from me. And so that's why I kind of started this project. So if it's your very first one ever, it might not be too slow of a pace. It might be you just test the waters in other ways with that first issue or something like that. Just put it up online. If it's going to be floppy, I think it's a really good idea. I mean, it's like a slower pace, like you said, but a lot of the people who I've bought the most books from are ones that started out just putting their comics online for free. And then they collected those together. And that was their first Kickstarter, was a collection of those. And I was on, I mean, I'd already read half of it and I was like stoked for it, right? Like, let's say you do 3 issues. The first 2, let us just read them. On the third, put it in a Kickstarter, put the other 2 issues in it together, put them together in a bigger project. And then that third issue is brand new for the readers of the previous 2 to get into. And then for new readers too, they could have just found you and still be able to get into your story. So, I mean, I really think sometimes just going straight up floppy comics, the first comic I ever made on Kickstarter, is kind of too fast of a pace. Sometimes it's smarter, I think, to wait till your project has gotten bigger. With this one, I knew that each of these issues is going to be about 50 pages. When it's all said and done, the whole story will be about 150, give or take. And I will be able to make those. Like, this isn't going to be a floppy. It's going to be a soft cover, kind of like a trade kind of thing. And so with that in mind, I knew, like, I've got a good product that I can sell. And then when all 3 of these are done, I could hardcover it. I can make a nice, cool 150-page like collectible thing out of this. I've even thrown out the idea of finding like a color or something. And maybe whenever this thing goes to hardcover, I actually get it colored. Because at this point, I'm planning on making the whole series in this black and white style that I work in, because it's kind of my specialty. So yeah, I hope that answers your question and kind of future questions for anybody else thinking about that. Like, I definitely think Kickstarter is an awesome place to use to like get things started. And even like doing a Kickstarter and failing, and I've heard this from a lot of people, and I'm completely expecting it might happen to me. Sometimes you do that and you realize you're not ready for it either, right? Like, if mine doesn't make it, the reason why I'm still so gung-ho to get it done and make this thing happen is that then I know it's back to the drawing board, share this with people, get it out there, finish the whole story, and try again, kind of thing, you know? I think that pace is actually might be perfect for you if it's like you're already kind of having the doubts and that kind of stuff in your mind, you know? All right, guys. Well, if there aren't any more questions, this was a good little sesh here. I hope you guys can actually see kind of what's going down here with it. It's weird to do my pencils. This is why I ink. My pencils just look so much different from like my inks. Like when I start to get on there and hit it with the screen tones and kind of make a mess out of it. I won't probably do anything more to these pencils up here or these. Like, I need just enough information on this to kind of know where my character is, and then I do most of my inking after that just by hand. So you guys got a fun experience I don't often do, which is kind of being sloppy with my pencils. So thanks for joining me, guys. I want to do another couple quick little plugs. If you guys follow my Instagram, I am going to start doing more live Instagram things as progress things. I haven't decided yet, and I don't want to say it out loud, because like I just said, if I say it out loud, it means I'm going to do it. But I think I'm going to set a schedule leading up to the reveal of me just going live and kind of finishing the last few pages and all that kind of stuff. So that's a cool thing to look forward to. Remember, as a quick post, if you're finding me, if you're hanging out, you know where to find me. If you just watch this afterwards, Art of Mr. Fleming on Instagram is the place to be. I put the links in the bio. Shout out to, if you guys don't listen to the Artcasters, Scott O'Green, my partner, was on there this week, and their latest episode is all about basically facing your fears as an artist. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Go check out the good stuff, and we'll catch you guys next week, same time, same channel. Hopefully Scott will be along for the ride. All right. Peace, guys.